So let's start working on our automation framework. For reference, we'll be testing the JSON placeholder service, which is available from this URL, jasonplaceholder.typico.com, and it has various endpoints we can use for testing. So let's make a GET request for the posts endpoint. So in order to get started, let's start by making a feature file. So under resources, let's go ahead and create a directory and call it features. And within that, let's create our first feature file. So we'll call that posts.feature. And this is basically what will store our Cucumber test cases, written in simple English and able to execute API tests. So a feature file should have a name. We'll call it posts, and we'll say a little description. So as a test automation engineer, I want to test the posts API so that I have confidence in the quality of the service. Okay, and then we can create a scenario and we'll call it verify a GET request for all posts returns 200. So this test case is going to run a GET request to the post endpoint and check that the response code is 200, which means everything's okay and the posts are returned. So we'll say given I send GET request to /posts, then I expect status code is 200. Okay, so this is our feature file, which we should be able to just run. And now what we have to do is create the code that will lie behind this and will actually be kicking off the tests and checking the responses. So if we see on the left-hand side, resources will contain the feature files and Java will contain our actual Java code. So let's go ahead inside Java and create a new directory or a package, and we'll call it steps. And within steps, we're going to need two Java classes. The first one will be called hooks. So just go ahead and create hooks.java. One second. Oh, maybe Java class, that's why. Hooks. Okay. So hooks is basically going to be what we use in order to add any code we want to run before every test or after every test. It's kind of like the hub of our tests. So we'll need to import some various packages into this class. So for example, cucumber.api.scenario, which is our Cucumber scenarios within the feature files. We'll also import cucumber.api.java.after, which is an after hook, which allows us to run code after every test. Another one is cucumber.api.java.before for code to run before every test. You should get these auto-filling as you type, and that will be because the Gradle dependencies have imported successfully. If not, you might want to double check that. I think that's good for now. So let's add some code to our hooks class. And we'll say private void, or actually, let's do at before, which is our before tag. Let's bring that down a bit. And we'll say, before, and then open bracket, close bracket. Let's say public void setup API. So before every test, we might want to run this function to, set up the test case or do anything we want really, but we'll just say within this, we'll just print system.out.println, and we'll say scenario starting, and we'll do scenario you can say you can pass scenario as a parameter into this function, and we'll say scenario.getName. So before every scenario, we want it to say the scenario is starting and give the name of the scenario. And then while we're here, let's just add a after hook, and we'll call it public void teardown, and we'll say system.out.println scenario ended, and we'll say plus scenario.getName. Sorry, once again, so we need the scenario dot getName. Okay, so this is our hooks class. Now let's go on to the interesting class, which is the dictionary. This is what's going to be used by the feature files in order to run the Java code. So let's call it dictionary.java. Dictionary. Okay. And let's import some packages that we definitely will need, which is import static io.RestAssured, and again this should be pre-populating from your dependencies. Let's import cucumber.api.java.given. Sorry, just something missing there. .en.given. Again, basically given, when, and then we're importing at the moment. So en.when. Okay, that's the given, when, then. I think that should be okay for now. Let's just start writing our code, and we can auto import the other dependencies as and when required. So the first thing we want to do is declare a response. So we'll do private response, and here we go. To auto import, you can use command and enter. Whoops, maybe not. Oh, it's alt and enter. And we want to use the RestAssured one. Okay, make sure you choose this particular one. And also we want to import validatable response. This one. And we'll call this JSON. Okay, so we've got the responses and we've got the actual JSON from the response. So let's go ahead and initialize all of our API tests that we want to write. So we need to declare here RestAssured dot request specification equals new request spec builder. So this is basically building the foundation for our API requests. And we'll say dot set base URI, and our base URI is going to be from JSON placeholder, so we can grab the URL, put that in there, set base URI, and then we want to set what we want to log, so we'll say log detail .uri. So for each API request we want to just log the URI. You can log everything or something specific, but let's just stick with the URI for now, and then we'll say .build. Okay, so now getting back to our feature file, given I send a GET request to /post, then I expect status code is 200. So we need to build two functions for these statements. So let's do the first line. So we need a tag given, and within that put quotes, and then we put I send GET request to, and then we're going to have a parameter which is allowing us to specify the endpoint. So if you just follow what I'm writing, this is basically a regular expression to allow any text to be entered. That looks okay to me. And then we'll call this public void I send GET request to X, and we'll say it takes a string which is the endpoint, and then we'll say when this method is run, what we want it to do is get the response, or the response will be, given dot when dot get, and we'll put endpoint. Okay, so this is basically the RestAssured function where it's going to send a GET request to the endpoint, with the endpoint being the endpoint we give to this function. So in the feature file it would be the post endpoint, and as you can see, the line 7 has no longer got this yellow background to it or highlight, and that's because it's noticed that we've implemented a function for this method, or for this line, So we just need to add one more for the then that we've added. So we'll say then quotes, and we'll say I expect status code is, and we'll put a regular expression that will allow just digits, because the status code wouldn't be any characters, like a string. So we'll put a regular expression for that, so any number of digits. You can do something more specific if you want, but this should be fine. Yep, this looks good. Yep, and we'll say public void I expect status code is X, and we'll say int status code. So for this, what we need to do is we need to get the response JSON and verify it. So we'll say JSON equals response dot then dot status code, and we'll pass in status code. So again, this is a RestAssured method that will check the status code of the response. So that's what we're using as part of this Cucumber step. So if we go back to posts, as we can see, it's now unhighlighted line 8. And what we can do is we can test this now by right-clicking and selecting Run Scenario. So let's see what happens. It's running the scenario. There's the URI that we provided. And we can see that the test passed. There's no errors. There are some warnings here to do with log4j, but that's something we'll get onto later, just for the logging. Nothing to worry about. So we can see our before hook was run. It says scenario starting, and then it's got the scenario name, which is up here. We've then got the request URI, which we've logged under this step definition. and after the scenario it says scenario ended, and again the scenario name, which we specified in the after hook. Okay, so let's see what would happen if the test case failed. So let's make it fail deliberately. Let's say instead of 200, we're looking for a 401. So let's right click. Sometimes you may not get this, but yeah, just try on the line 6 on the scenario name level. Let's run that. And there we go. When it fails, you'll get more information on why it failed. So we can see expected status code 401, but it was actually 200. So there was an assertion error. Okay? And that's pretty much how you can run a GET request using RestAssured and Cucumber.